On?
Yes, we are on. So this is the default content meeting for October 25th, 2016.
Okay, awesome. So I set up a meeting notes document in Drive, which I put in the Slack, and I see that some people are in it already. Where did I put it? There it is. Okay. All right. So so I can give my update from the last meeting, and then we can, if anybody wants to add agenda items, they can do that in here. Update from the last meeting and what's happened in the interim, some of which is in the Slack, is that so we had discussions around what the content model should be, and some little nitty-gritty details on some particular ways that we wanted to deal with certain fields in the model, particularly around the recipe, which has some tricky kind of details around how you add an item in the recipe, and then also its its quantity. For example, 2 cups of sugar or whatever. We don't really have a compound field in Drupal that has a entity reference for a type of ingredient, and then also a quantity. And so the thing that we agreed on was to just have plain text fields for the ingredients, but then we can also tag the key ingredients at the end of the. And I think you guys both heard that in the last meeting, Joe and Keith. But subsequent to that, so I went and I pretty much made the whole model as a feature. And then I uploaded it. And if you want to pull it down and local install it, you can do that in from the Slack. It's actually in the Slack. If you go into the back scroll, you'll see the bundle there that you can pull down and install as an install profile. And I think you can install it as an install profile. You may have to install it as a feature in a running site. I actually haven't done that myself yet, so I'm not certain. Maybe Gabor has an answer on that. But so Lee saw that, and he was super excited because he didn't expect, I guess, me to go ahead and make essentially the whole content model. So what he's offered, what he has said that he's going to do is to actually take the, to take all the individual chunks or entities from that bundle and split them up into separate, into the separate features, and then put them into the respective issues and create tests for them, so that we'll have all that properly captured in code in Git. Which right now I didn't do anything with it in Git. I just literally just downloaded it as a tarball and uploaded it back into the system. So that's where we are. That's where we are with that. And then unfortunately I did not make any progress on the other thing that we had discussed last time around getting a place to put visual assets in the UX Google Drive, but that's still an action item for me because I was working on the other thing with the actual content model itself. So I don't know whether anybody else has any updates or.
Yep, I can give you a quick update on what we've started if you want me to.
Sure.
Yep. Okay. So I went through this project with a couple of members of our team yesterday. So Megan, who we work with to do copyright, she works with us on various projects doing the copywriting and kind of some of the content strategy work we do. And myself and Jody do quite a bit of design work. So on the back of last week's meeting, there was a link shared. I forget by who. Sorry about that. I don't know if it was you, Joe. But Joe or Lee, I think it was. But there was an example farm website provided there, and I also went and had a look at the local farmers market site, and interestingly enough, it was I don't know if you saw that link in the back scroll in Slack there, but there was a good example there of something very similar to this type of thing.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, but the main thing is we were just sort of getting the conversation going here, thinking about how we might want to approach the content on this, and really just sort of early kind of discovery, having a good look around at what examples are out there, what others have done, both visually and from a content perspective. I think both. It's really interesting tying those two things together and getting that perspective. So we have, from the sort of design side, and I appreciate this is about the content, I appreciate this is about building the content, but it was more to inform tone and approach. It raises some questions that I need to sort of formulate. But basically, we've started putting a mood board together that we can share. I think that should be quite interesting to discuss through in the next meeting. And we've also started, partially based on your Google Shared Doc, Kevin. We've been sort of bringing a bit of structure around the content. So, what does the content style look like for the homepage, for the introduction to the site, for the getting the users acquainted to the site perspective, then diving into the actual vendors. We haven't dived into the sort of recipe angle yet. Interestingly, the product conversation did come up, and so that was one that got touched on as well, from the perspective of is there the opportunity to present products, and we're actually putting some sample content together around that as well, so that we've actually got examples that go along with this. So it's very much just kind of playing around, really, working in the sandbox effectively. And I think we could be able to share that we will be able to share that over the coming week. So it'd be great to have one central place. I'd like to sort of package it together in one document for now, so that we can keep it concise. And obviously be advised how best to share it.
Right. So as you're working on that, are you actually do you have a local install that you're actually sort of really literally playing with?
I saw your post over the weekend, but I haven't had a chance to actually get on and do that. So we've got most of the way through the actual guide. So there are some dots to join up here at the moment. On that, to answer that question, no, directly. We're sort of getting there. But I think it's also about just trying to set the scene and see what else is out there. That's the approach we've been taking, and talking about this very much from a kind of, I think you nailed it in your description, certainly in terms of the approach we've been taking in the description that you put in your shared doc. Okay,
cool, awesome. Yes, so yeah, one of the things that I noticed that as soon as I started working with the actual model in Drupal and sort of built out the content model, and then in my local environment, I actually started writing content as well. Just to not really as content that we would actually go ahead and use, because I'm not really a copywriter, but just sort of issues with it. See how it would work. And it's interesting when you actually start writing the content in Drupal, and seeing it, sort of rendered, even if it's just in Bardic theme, you begin to see some of the, some of the tricky little issues. And a lot of these things also start to revolve around design decisions. Like, for example, I looked at, when I looked at the model, I was looking at allrecipes.com for the recipe, for ideas around the recipe. And, there's a lot of things that they've added. They're a nicely sort of thought out product. And there are a lot of sort of little nice touches that they've added, where they've sort of iconized certain things, like cook time has it just has like a little clock icon and then the time next to it. And, there's little things like that where it's like, it's content and design together, because there's a design decision around let's use an icon here and not spell out this entire form label. So there's a lot of little subtle decisions that sort of surface as you start to play with the model in an actual Drupal site. So that's yeah, I would recommend pulling down the bundle that I uploaded and sort of just mess around and try it out. One other thing that occurred to me as I was going through this, and I'd love to hear your opinion, Keith, on this, is we may not necessarily want to write full articles for every single piece of example content. We may want to have the first paragraph be real text, and then following after that with sort of some flavor of ipsum. There actually is foodie ipsum. I have a link to a really good spot to get that. There are several kinds of flavors of foodie ipsum, as a matter of fact. I'm just thinking about the fact that if we want to build it out with enough content so that a views listing page doesn't look sparse, that's a lot of content to support.
Yeah, this was one of the questions that came up, because it's about the imagery as well. There's potentially quite a bit to think about in terms of bringing it together. Certainly, I think that having some food-related ipsum could be a great start, and I think it's going to sort of make things more rapid to prototype, isn't it? So I guess then it just depends on how much, presuming the content that someone like Megan produces is appropriate and people feel it's appropriate, then I think it depends how much Megan's up for, really, because she's pretty quick. So we'd be happy to, obviously we need to keep a rein on it, and there could come a point where we want so much content we definitely need to go down that route. But I'd like for it to be as real as we can make it. Yeah.
I was thinking kind of like along the lines of, that the rest. I think the recipes kind of really need to be real.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to. It's not really even going to be helpful to try to ipsum in ingredients, because it's not going to look like anything, and it's only one or two words, for an ingredient. So I kind of feel like, we want all of our recipes to be real, but if there are longer pieces of content, like or longer fields in that, like sort of cooking instructions that might be 3 or 4 paragraphs long, that we might only want to have the first paragraph or the first few lines.
Yeah, I think the recipes is going to be the more challenging area as well, because we need to keep the content original, I guess.
Well, interesting, because recipes are an interesting kind of case, because they're not really copyrightable. I've discovered. So I don't think we're going to run afoul of any kind of like intellectual property rights there, unless I imagine that they were word for word from some other source. But if it's just the ingredients and the quantities, that is not copyrightable.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that's a big help.
Yeah, there's been some cases around that, actually, because there's a lot of sites that reuse recipes or republish recipes that have been challenged using.
Okay.
So there's that. What about on the image side?
Yeah, so I was looking through the site that you gave the example to, what was the name of that site again? I wrote it down 1 second. I got it in my notes. Pexels? Yeah, pexels.com.
Pexels, yeah.
Yeah, so that had some images in there that definitely we could use to get going with. And in terms of actually the photography, I think it's led by the content, isn't it, to a degree, because we need to be sure that we're happy with the setting the scene of a kind of, Hampshire, UK farmers market, if that's the way we're writing it, if that's the angle we're taking, then obviously the photography can lead into that quite easily, being that it's all on our doorstep and it's something we can produce. So I don't see any issues in terms of actual, getting out there and doing that. There may be issues around conversations about sort of signing off the photos for use, getting permission in general to go and do some shoots, that kind of thing. I need to look a little bit more into the sort of, the kind of the legal side of that, I suppose. But also just doing shoots in general with more close-up products, again, that's less of a problem. That's something we can do here with ease.
Right. I'm just making note of this. Recipes no, and then subsequent paragraphs. And I'll put a link to. I'll put some links in here to the ipsums that I found that are like sort of foodie related ipsums. There's at least 3 or 4 of them. There's bacon ipsum, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think I've seen that one.
And there's just general foodie ipsum, and then there's a few others that I found. Okay, so that's cool. Yeah, and so then there's also the there is still this question in the model. Well, I guess we kind of resolved that. Question for the moment. Although I think actually it's still open in the issue. So the question was, do we actually introduce a new a new field in this as well as another kind of dependency, as a sort of another experimental module? So Gabor, did you see that that thread or that issue? Angie and I kind of went back and forth a little bit in it.
No, I did not.
Here, let me see if I can. It's I think it's in the 1874-1. Yeah. So it's in 281. Here, I'll put the link in the Slack. But yeah, so I think it could be valuable. So somebody in this issue had suggested. Who the heck was it? Somebody in this issue had suggested a module called entity reference quantity. Kim Zero. Who was Kim Zero? Do you know who that is?
Yeah, I heard about the module.
Yeah. So my thought. So Angie said that that she thought that this was not an 80% use case for Drupal to need that. But I don't know. I kind of feel like this is something common, especially if we made it kind of a little bit more generic, like it's like compound field. Lots of cases in which people would need a compound field. A field with a reference and a value, or 2 values even possibly.
Yeah, that's like field collection. Yeah, but a lot of people use field collections. I also ran into entity reference quantity recently that I needed for sites, but yeah.
Yeah, I think field collection is big. Field collection is like is a big module with lots of functionality. I kind of feel like this is just like another type of field that we need, which is like Just that's why entity reference quantity is so neat, is nice, because it's so compact. It's like we added fields like phone, and email and things like that. It feels like this is just something lightweight that we could put in as, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, possibly.
I don't want to create a dependency that's going to hang up this issue or cause or slow things down with a big bite set. What's your opinion on that, Gabor?
We can work around it for now, and we can get people to look at this if they want to. I mean, if this seems to be a general use case, then other people would be able to voice their opinions that it's good, and we can even implement this later on, given that we don't plan to support an upgrade path for the existing data, because that's install it for them. So we can use it in a later version if we want to, in a better model.
Okay. All right, that sounds good. So how about so what I'll do is I'll open a separate issue just for that in the ideas queue for add entity reference quantity to core. Let me just make a note of that so I don't forget that. Where am I? Okay. So one other thing that we could do, maybe Keith, possibly you guys might look at this, is we can create issues. We can create issues for the actual writing of the individual pieces of content. So Lee created issues in the sandbox for the building of the sort of the types and all of the different sort of parts of the content model, but he didn't create any issues yet for example, write content for farmers market, not basic page, but like history or like about page in farmers market, write article or write recipe number one, or write recipes, those kind of things. So if we actually create issues for those, then that's a place that that draft content can be uploaded into, and we can look at it and sort of and discuss it. At least, I guess, maybe perhaps starting with issues like write an example of what a recipe would look like. Write an example of what a vendor profile would look like. Write the about the market content.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
It makes complete sense. I'm just thinking that through. So we're very much taking the overview approach at the moment to get the overall feeling of how this is gonna, what the tone of this is. So I guess what would make sense is if I can share that with you first, maybe in the next meeting.
That'd be awesome.
Then we can just sort of decide, is it ready to be broken down into parts, and take it from there. How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Yeah. I've literally received the bits and bobs from Megan and Jody, and some of the stuff that I've been doing just before this meeting. So I'm just shy of the mark for this week, but it needs to be brought together right.
Okay, cool. That would be great. And then yeah, I think so. This is basically all I kind of have at the moment. I think maybe one other next step from me maybe is to I need to kind of brief Lowry and the theme, the new theme project people on our progress, so that they're in the loop, because they're probably going to want to provide some feedback on an ongoing basis on everything that we do. So I'm actually, I have their meeting in my schedule, but I might actually just send a message to Larry and give him some info on what's going on. Joe, did you have anything to add that you wanted to add, or any questions or thoughts? You may be muted. All right. Okay. Was I breaking up? I was asking Joe. Joe, if you had anything that you wanted to add?
No, you're not breaking up.
Oh, okay. There's some kind of fan going on in my room here, and it's making a lot of noise. So I don't know whether you could hear me or not.
Hearing you clear.
Joe must be. All right. Well, anyway, I don't have. Oh, Joe's mic is not working. Okay. All right. So I didn't have any other agenda items myself, and yeah, and I think we've covered a lot. So we could end early. That's okay with everybody else, unless anybody had anything else to add.
So we know all the next steps. We have no questions left.
So yeah, so I have, for next steps, I have get a bucket of images set up for Google Drive, create issues for content, recipe, and vendor. I need to add the issue for entity reference quantity, and I have, for me, brief Lowry on progress.
Mm-hmm.
I have a great next step, because I think the next Winchester market is actually next weekend. So the Winchester one is the last Sunday for each month. So I'll head down there and see what we come out of there with, apart from bread.
Or I'm going to write for research and possibly photos, or no?
Yeah, I think it's probably worth taking a few just sort of general snaps that wouldn't be used for the real thing, just to see if the idea works, really, isn't it? Just to get a feel and see how it comes across. That would be a really good idea.
Well, let's call them scout photos.
Scout photos. I like that.
There we go. All right, I think that's
scouting for snaps.
Yeah, that's a nice chunk of stuff for us to chew on until next time.
Yeah, that's great.
Cool. All righty. So if there's nothing else, then I'll talk to everybody soon and see you in Slack.
Yep.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you. See you.
Have a good one.